All right, let's talk about Thomas Edison. We all know the name, right? The genius, the inventor. But what if I told you that whole story is kind of a lie, a carefully crafted myth? In this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the much darker truth behind the legend.
So, when you think Edison, what pops into your head? For most of us, it's hero, right? The great inventor. But what if it's not that simple? What if that clear line we imagine between hero and villain is actually really, really blurry?
Yeah, we all know the legend. Edison, the lone genius, tinkering away until, poof, he gives us light. But the sources we're digging into here paint a very different picture. Was he a true innovator, or was he a ruthless businessman who built a whole empire by crushing his rivals and, honestly, by selling some pretty big lies? Okay, so to really get the real story of Edison, you've got to look past the inventions. You have to look at the brand. See, he wasn't just some guy in a lab. He was a PR mastermind. He literally built this image of himself as the genius, the face of progress. And this, right here, this really gets to the heart of it. So forget that picture you have in your head of a guy working alone in some dusty workshop. Edison was more like the CEO of an invention factory. Think about that, a business designed to just pump out and sell new ideas. He wasn't just the creator, he was the guy running the whole show, the strategist behind the machine. And that's the absolute core of his strategy. In the cutthroat world of business and innovation, especially back then, it's not always about being the smartest. Nope, it's about being the most strategic, the most relentless, and, when you have to be, the most dangerous. All right, let's dive into the big one, the invention that made him a household name. We're going to tackle the biggest myth of all, the light bulb. Okay, so this lays it all out plain and simple. The myth, Edison invented the light bulb. End of story. But the reality? Well, the truth is, light bulbs, or at least early versions, were already a thing. Edison and his team didn't invent it out of thin air. What they did do was improve it like crazy, find a filament that actually worked for a long time, and, this is the most important part, they figured out how to market it and sell it to everyone. You see, this is the crucial point. His real genius wasn't that first spark of invention. It was in taking an existing idea, making it practical, making it profitable, and then building a whole system around it. The guy was an absolute master at turning a cool concept into a massive commercial empire. And that really gets to the heart of his success. You could argue his greatest invention wasn't the light bulb at all. It was the story that came with it. That powerful myth that he, and he alone, was the guy who brought light to the world. He didn't just build a product, he built the myth, and he owned it completely. So this knack for controlling the story, it was about to face its biggest test ever in one of the most epic rivalries in tech history. The stage was set for a massive showdown that would decide the future of electricity. I'm talking about the War of Currents. So here's the setup. You've got Edison's entire empire built on his technology, direct current, or DC. But then comes this brilliant guy, Nikola Tesla, who actually used to work for Edison, and he has this game-changing idea, alternating current, or AC. And let's be real, AC was just better. It was cheaper, way more efficient, and you could send it over long distances. It was a massive threat to everything Edison had built. So that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? If you're Edison and a better technology comes along that could completely wipe you out, what's your move? Do you try to compete fairly on the science? Or do you find another way to win the fight? Well, Edison chose another way. He knew he probably couldn't win a fight based on pure science, so he did something brilliant and terrifying. He changed the entire battlefield. The fight wasn't going to be in the lab anymore. It was going to be in the minds of the public, and he was going to use the oldest, most powerful weapon there is, fear. And what happened next was, frankly, one of the most vicious and just plain disturbing propaganda campaigns tech has ever seen. His playbook was as simple as it was brutal. Step 1, make everyone think AC power equals death. Step 2, prove it by staging horrifying public electrocutions. The whole goal was just to weaponize fear and make people absolutely terrified of his rival's technology. And the victims in this campaign, they were animals. We're talking about horrifying public shows where Edison's team would use AC power to electrocute stray dogs, calves, and, in the most infamous case, an entire circus elephant named Topsy. And let's be crystal clear here.
This had nothing to do with science. This was pure psychological warfare. It was a marketing campaign, plain and simple, designed to brand Tesla's technology as a killer and make his own seem like the only safe option. So after hearing all that, you have to wonder, how did he win? Why do we remember him as the guy who changed the world? Well, it turns out it was never just about the tech. Edison's real winning formula was way bigger than just the laboratory. He knew that to totally dominate, you had to control everything. You control the patents, so you own the ideas. You control the media, so you own the story. You control the investors, so you own the money. And most of all, you control what the public thinks. You own their perception.
So when it comes down to it, Edison didn't win the war of currents because DC was better. It wasn't. He won because he was louder. He was a better showman, a smarter businessman, and he just completely outmaneuvered his competition in the public eye. And all of this brings us to the final, and maybe the most dangerous, lesson in the whole story of Thomas Edison. Because when you really look back on it all, Edison's most significant invention wasn't a product. It wasn't the light bulb. It was the story of the product. He invented the modern idea of the lone genius inventor. He didn't just create new tech, he literally invented the way we tell the story of technology and who gets to be the hero. And that's where we'll leave it, with this final thought. It makes you ask, doesn't it? How much of the history we know is what actually happened, and how much of it is just the best story, told by the person with the loudest voice?